Hi, folks. Welcome to the third episode of Indy News Publishers Speak. I'm your co-host, Jason Pramas of the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism. And over here is who?
Joanna Detz. I'm the publisher at ecoRI News in beautiful Rhode Island. And I seem to have kicked Brian off this show. I don't know what.
Where's Brian? Amusingly, Brian is at the Institute for Nonprofit News's kind of annual thing, INN Days, and it's amusing because we're actually going to be criticizing INN a bit in this show, although as usual,
I hope Brian. I hope Brian is safe.
Yeah, stay safe, Brian. but I will hasten to add that this is not personal about individual people, even when we name them. This is structural critique we're engaged in. And once again, this episode, after doing basically the same thing the last episode, we're going to be talking about, AI, or as I like to call it, so-called AI, as it relates to independent news outlets, in particular nonprofit ones like Joanna's and mine. And, the INN, Institute for Nonprofit News, serves mainly, I'm not sure exclusively, but mainly nonprofit news organizations, as their name implies. So last week we got an email, and I'm once again printing things out, although I print them out in tiny type, and then I'm like, I know, I'm so old-fashioned. We got an email from Andrew Haig of INN, and he's the network product manager. So I guess he's one of their techies. And the title and this is going to the INN list that all the 450 plus publishers that are in INN are on. And it was entitled "How Your Newsroom Can Adopt to Google's Shift to AI Search." Right? Seems like already for Joanna and I, this is raising our antenna and our hackles simultaneously, because we're like, why ever would we want to adopt to that? We're already suffering mightily, as are all organizations out there, whether they're commercial, nonprofit, whatever, whether they're news or anything else. But anyone who's been putting content onto websites and expecting that Google search, and to a much lesser degree, Bing search and other search engines out there, there aren't a whole ton of them. Most search engines you see work off of Google, right? One way or the other. But, all these content creators using now apparently antiquated things called websites have come to expect that by what used to be called SEO, doing search engine optimization on our websites, to get to sort of privilege our websites on certain search terms people might use relating to what we do. So in our two cases, news, right? We're producing news and particular kinds of news, right? Joanna's doing, ecology news basically for Rhode Island. And Binge, my group, is doing more general news about Massachusetts, with a focus on investigative reporting on several major topics like prisons, transportation, whatever. The goal was to make sure that you were, if you could get your website in the top 3 ranked positions on Google search for things to do with what you do. So in my case, healthcare for prisoners in Massachusetts, searches on that, we would tend to rank high, and that would bring us traffic, you see, because the way search engines, particularly Google, worked until about a couple of years ago was that, there'd be a list of results of people's searches. And if you were popular and if their little robots found you the right way, you'd be listed literally high up on the page that people would get in front of them when they did the search. So, and there are a lot of shenanigans, companies with deep pockets could pay Google for a higher ranking for basically ads that would put above the regular search term. But whatever. I mean, if you were high up, people would see you on the first page, whether they were looking on their web browsers on computers or whether they were looking on phones or tablets. So they then click on it and they come to your website and you get traffic. And the better you were at this SEO, the more traffic you got. Well, Google and every other search company and tech company that's doing what they call AI has started doing this new thing over the last couple of years where they put, as we've discussed before, AI summary, which is aimed at keeping everyone searching on the search site and not going to other sites. The summary just summarizes what they glean, or more to the point now, if we're talking about what's happening, steal from we that are creating content. On the one hand, they're training these large language models that they call artificial intelligence when they're not artificial intelligence. They're stealing, and have stolen all the stuff we put up on our sites, right? Bringing them into these large language models for processing and training. And they claim at times, these different major companies like OpenAI and Google and others, oh, we did that then, we're not doing it now, or, oh, we got rid of all that information we were training on. We don't believe it for a second because, who, after all, is really regulating them? How would we know? There are industry watchdogs and stuff. We pay attention to those. We are starting to number ourselves in the ranks of watchdogs, I guess, as time goes on, some of us, but we don't know. We don't know what they do. And these companies have such a track record of lying about everything that we have no reason to believe that they've really changed their ways. And they're certainly not paying us for any of this, which is something we definitely need to talk about with our fellow publishers soon. But we're not getting anything for this. So now we're being told by a group that's supposed to be, among other things, kind of a trade association representing nonprofit news organizations, hundreds of us, that we're supposed to just adopt to the fact of this AI summary. And we're supposed to do something instead of SEO that we kind of know how to do. And there's a whole industry around, right? There's a lot of advice one can get. You can hire specialists to help out, whatever. No, now it's answer engine optimization that you want to do, AEO. And what does this involve? Well, what they're saying in this INN newsletter is what certainly people like Joe and I already know. We're supposed to set our robots.txt file behind the scenes of each website to allow the Google bots and other bots connected to so-called AI, into our sites so they can see everything. And we're supposed to do certain things to make those little bots. Now they're called AI bots, right? They're a different kind of bot than the old bots for stuff. And we're supposed to, set up our sites so that we're more seen for what? For AI summary. And sure, Andrew Haig of INN in this email is recognizing that maybe some of us don't want to do that and mentions that we can block those bots, or again, let's be real, we can try to block the bots, but almost certainly we can't really block the bots, but we can try, right? If we wish. Okay, fine. But he's saying when Google's AI search initially rolled out, we heard from INN members who saw substantial declines in referrals, which of course is basically all of us. And apart from a few outliers, not much in the way of new traffic from AI answer experiences. Joanna, we're having experiences with AI answers, though discerning what traffic. Yeah, that's what he's calling it. Though discerning what traffic comes from where is a challenge. Yes, to put it mildly, Andrew. Now Google has updated its AI search and says it will strengthen the link between AI answers and where they came from. They include more inline links, added preferred sources in the AI overview, and are exploring a range of other link design changes. And it goes on for a bit from there. Now, this doesn't mean anything. I subscribe to at least one newsletter from the search engine optimization industry that's trying to make heads or tails of what's going on now. And, even the most recent newsletter this morning is just filled with doom posts from all kinds of publishers saying, we're not getting anything from this now, still, after, year and a half, 2 years. of all of our search traffic being stolen from us. And keep in mind, for a lot of websites, folks, especially news sites, we're talking anywhere from 30% to 80 or 90% of all of our traffic used to come this way. And it's just like it's a spigot was turned. And as it happens, Binge, my group actually paid an AI optimization specialist. It's a friend of ours, paid pretty good money for, like 7-8 months, about 3/4 of the year, 9 months. And we learned how to optimize for AI. And as everyone's saying on these Doom posts, we increase our impressions with the search, the new AI search, but the click-through rate continues to be close to zero. In other words, it doesn't matter, what Google is saying or any of these companies are saying. It's well known. Like, for example, I think what Google is saying here, like, we're going to make sure there's links somewhere in our AI summary box on top of everything else and it's already known from the Pew Charitable Trust report of last year. That was then, by the way, only 1% of people even tried to find other links anywhere, be it in the summary box or below it in search, on Google and everywhere else. And that numbers can only be going down at this point. Only people like Joanna and I would even think to do what you all should do this. If you're going to be, as how can you not? Because it's being shoved everywhere now. If you're doing search and you're trying to, you're using so-called AI chatbots and you're asking questions, always ask in each question for citations and links. And then you're going to get the links and specific sites, even academic style, if you wish, right there where you can see it and you can just click on stuff right there. It's not hidden off in a corner of summary. It's not below where you're just not going to scroll and look usually, unless you're me or Joanna, we probably still do that.
But I think how many people are actually going to do that, right? Like that's, and who can blame people? They're in a rush. They're trying to get information. That summary it's super easy. It's giving you the answer and you move on. So
of course, it's still hallucinating to beat the band. The reason you want to do the citations and links thing, and it's also known to make up sources. And how long until it starts making up duplicate websites to go with its imaginary sources when it's hallucinating? Like, in other words, literally an ecoRI News or a Binge fake page saying, yes, what I just said as a chatbot is exactly correct. See this fake page that I just created? How would we know, right? So I'm going to ask Joanna now. Well, Joanna, what do you make of this? This whole INN flacking for AI, right?
I mean, I think I read this email maybe 5 times, right? So the first time I sort of read it with surprise, and then I read it with disgust, and then like low level rage, I guess you could call it. Yeah. I don't get super angry all the time, like rarely do.
This is true.
I mean, basically, they're telling us. I mean, the metaphor would be like, okay, like you have a house that's full of valuables and you're going away on a 5-week vacation. Jason, we that's like never going to happen for us, but
it will not.
In this metaphor, you're going away on a 5-week vacation. Don't set the alarm. Put up a welcome sign and let the burglars in. Like, this is giving them license to, yes, I'll use the word steal our content to make billions of dollars as they extract investment capital for their AI research and development. And it just boggles my mind that a trade association for nonprofit newsrooms would be pushing this out. I don't know what to make of it, other than I'm beginning to feel like an unpaid employee of Google, just providing content for them for their language learning models and to keep people on their platform, and not come to my website that I've spent time and money and effort, human capital building. So it's very demoralizing. And in tandem with this, I was kind of thinking about it because I'm also getting quite a good deal of coaching and training and sort of tips from INN and Lion about how to convert website visitors to subscribers. And there's a lot of talk about CTA. That's, what is that? Click to action, whatever.
Call to action?
Call to action. Thank you. On your website, and they're always embed a form to click through, to subscribe to your newsletter, make it easy, make it frictionless. How are we going to get newsletter subscribers if nobody is coming to our website? And we all know in this industry, including INN, that newsletters drive revenue for small publishers and mid-sized publishers. So I just see this as choking off essentially revenue for our newsrooms, and I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much research if we want to be journalists, which of course we do. Don't know about INN. They're not actually journalists anyway, but I don't know what they want these days.
Do you do research? Do you have numbers? I have a few numbers, a little bit. Mostly I have important information, which is no big surprise. See, and this also applies. This applies to INN. It also applies to the groups we were talking about under Steve Waldman's control, or at least partial control. Report for America and Rebuild News. We were talking about in the last episode. All of these groups are getting money from AI companies. Right. So, and which ones, you may ask? Well, INN is currently getting money from Google through its Google News initiative, which for most of us at this point on the ground just doesn't exist anymore. Right. But they're getting quite a bit of money, I believe. We'll check that in a moment. And then from Microsoft, they're also getting money. Right. Report for America is getting money from Google also. And from Meta, Facebook, and then Rebuild Local News is getting money from Microsoft, right? And of course, INN used to get money from Meta, from Facebook, when Facebook was doing more in the news space, right? And as to how much, I mean, the problem is I need to do more research, but I think currently listed for INN, which I believe is in the last year, maybe it's a couple of years. Google News Initiative is listed in the 1 million plus category for their funders on their transparency page. Microsoft is listed for 100,000 to 500,000, right? And since that's who we're discussing today, that's the most germane information. For Report for America, Meta is listed in the 5 million plus supporters, and Google News Initiative 1 to 5 million. And again, I don't know the period, how many years. And then for Rebuild Local News, there's no amount attached to what Microsoft is putting in over there. Anyway, these are not, inconsequential sums of money. And certainly we've seen a lot of hand in glove, kind of behavior from, INN, absolutely, when it comes particularly to Google and in the past to Meta, where just, all kinds of relationships are in the mix between these kinds of companies and these, groups that are supposed to be helping at the end of the day, news publishers, independent news publishers like us on the ground. And we're not feeling any love in terms of money, really, right? And if we were, we'd have to question some of the activities, like how close a group like INN is getting to these giant corporations, and how it affects like stuff like, again, to pull an example out of the thin air, the bill that was supposed to cost Google some money, that it was going to have to pay to news publishers in California, and how that got massively watered down in very, very backroom kind of deal situations that, I think more Lion than the local independent online news publishers, network in this case, but, they're all in these rooms, when lobbying is happening and stuff. And they're kind of making deals on our behalf, on behalf of the publishers on the ground, which means that they're speaking for us, which was our big critique of Steve Waldman last week. And for those of you keeping track, we were at the point
I don't think I even said this in the show, but if I did, I was talking to Steve. Yeah, I guess this would be after the show. Yeah, I was talking to Steve Waldman after the show last time, a couple weeks ago, going back and forth because he was like saying, I don't see the critique. And I'm like, here's the critique. And he's like, I'm all ears. And I said, gee, Steve, like, you kind of say that you're representing the grassroots news organizations on the ground, and that you're looking out to protect us and get deals with these AI companies that are going to make it better. But we're saying, like, what we'd really like, Steve Waldman, and connected people, as I put it, like you, is to come up with some money, to really properly convene discussion sessions and debates leading to polls, which would determine how the majority or vast majority of independent news publishers want to deal with the AI companies. And that would include something that Steve Waldman just isn't talking about, like, where's the money for what they already stole from us? Like, I mean, we can talk about reforms going forward, okay, right? Although if we're not in the mix of that lobbying, is it going to go like this California lobbying went, where, like, in the end there was a bad deal for most independent news publishers?
Right, and, or worse, they could deplatform us like they did to our friends in Canada. Facebook deplatformed news websites from its pages because they had the audacity to ask for reparations from what Facebook stole from them. So,
and actually get legislation to that end in Canada, and then they're punished, by companies that may be worth close to as much, individually as entire Canadian provinces.
Right. I mean, what those newsrooms were asking was probably Meta's Kleenex budget for the year. Like, it's mind blowing. And unfortunately, newsrooms have been so weakened that we don't have the organization and the lobbyists to go up against these large tech companies. And
you think that groups like INN,
INN, exactly.
You think they do that, like that maybe that's what they should be doing, is like, hey, this is destroying this entire sector of an industry that we're purporting to help, and we do have millions of dollars, right? And we have all these foundation and rich people connections, and we're gatekeeping those, right, however nicely, from those of us on the ground, so that we don't have any of that money, and yet they're not defending us. They're like, here, Google, here, Microsoft, Meta, here's all these publishers on a silver platter. And we're going to go under. Like my own group, I keep saying this in every show. We have a funding cliff in August, right? And we'll try to muddle through until we get some more money, but maybe we won't. And then maybe we'll just collapse entirely. And the more of us that collapse in this fashion as we lose audience because of all this at the end of the day. And I mean, if we have money, which most of us don't, we can pay lead generation groups to get us emails that might turn into subscribers. We don't know. It's going to cost a good deal of money, though, for that. Or we can do events in all our spare time and try to cobble together hundreds or thousands of more connections that way. But I mean, most of us do not have the money, time, or staff to up what we do in those areas. We just do not, So we're in a pickle, and they're just telling us lie over and take it. And if we all go away, then we're going to see an acceleration of AI hallucinations. We're going to see that these models are not getting better with every iteration. They're getting worse as they quote unquote train on AI slop created by these LLMs themselves. Like I was saying earlier, they could just duplicate our sites, but with bullshit.
I mean, and I don't know if you saw the article in the Boston Globe about the South Shore News, which is basically an AI news site.
It is.
And, like we're starting to see more of this spring up. And, the article wasn't, I read it, it was kind of a puff piece with a lot of really beautiful pictures of, the South Shore and the founder of this newsroom, who doesn't have a journalism background, is relying on AI to scrape community sites and town hall meeting notes to generate news. And I mean, there's no fact checking really. And is it filling a civic gap? I mean, that's open for debate, but this is what we're looking at, is the future of news if this continues. And I have no.
Which means there is no future for news. I mean, it's just I don't know what it is. It's slop. It's propaganda. It's nothing. There's no analysis. There's no critiques.
There's no accountability either, because if this individual, well-meaning though he might be, is relying on AI to do the reporting, so to speak. Like, what happens when there's a mistake or a hallucination or disinformation? There's no there. There's no, I don't know.
Well, and we have to, and the U.S. is nowhere near even where the EU and some other countries are, in starting to find ways, as I think they've done in Germany now, to actually hold the AI companies and other social media giants accountable for content that they put out, right? Which they never were. In the U.S., the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, I guess, what is it, 97 or whatever, has been a shield. What?
Wow, no, that's
has been a shield, against lawsuits for what the consequences of bad content are. I mean, we're already seeing some of this where, the chatbots are like, yes, disturbed teenager who's largely messed up because of this technology, go ahead and kill yourself. And here's 12 different ways to do it, right? Like, we are starting to see some holes in that armor, right? But we have a government at most levels, at least, that's increasingly bought and paid for by an industry that isn't even really making money, as we saw.
I wish I could be in that business.
I would, yeah.
Billions of dollars and not showing any revenue would be wonderful.
But I suppose I should narrow back down here and just talk about what you brought up, about the South Shore group, or person. I'm not even sure there's more than one,
it's a person.
Staffers, yeah. It's one person.
It's a guy.
Yeah, it's like they're going to run into the same. I'm sure they already are into the same problems that genius CEOs that run software companies are running into. Like, yeah, we got rid of 95% of our staff, and damned if our coding isn't terrible now, because we outsourced it to this unthinking chatbot, that must be checked by human programmers that we just got rid of. Otherwise, it just doesn't work, and it's the same kind of thing. You have people that don't know what they're doing, like asking, chatbots and tools built around chatbots to do stuff, agentic chat, you see, right? You got these supposed agents that are supposed to be even more sophisticated little bots that'll go do things for you. And they don't work, like they work here and there. They don't work consistently in many areas. There are some things they're better at and some things they're worse at. I don't think news is going to be one of the things that they're going to be good at. I don't view this as a way to bring communities that have become news deserts back online with news. I view it as another spike in the coffin of news.
Yeah, I mean, we work hard to build public trust, and it just further erodes that trust when we have organizations that are that don't have humans behind them. I mean, so much of this work is about being in community, talking to people. It's pretty basic, and I don't know. Sometimes I just want to hide under the covers. It's not enough.
Yes, that would be good. Plus, it's the hot season of year, so you're just going to get overheated.
Doesn't matter. I'm still going in there.
Okay, understandable. So, I mean, I guess all we can say to INN is like what what I was saying, on behalf of Joanna and Brian in the last episode. Gee, INN, why don't you put money into a real process where the publishers that are your members actually get to discuss how we want to deal with AI? And I don't think most of us are going to be like, oh, yay, let's just jump into this, feet first. We're going to be like, no, this is killing us. We have to stop this. And if this organization isn't going to do it, represent us properly, then who knows? Maybe the group that Joanna and I and Brian and a bunch of other people started, the Alliance nonprofit news outlets that we're now talking about, getting the band back together to kind of deal with this is going to do this stuff. Right, INN? Mm-hmm. Right, Steve Waldman. I think, that could happen. And I mean, yeah, we're broke. Yeah, and yeah,
but I think
we don't have much wherewithal.
That's our power. We have literally nothing to lose. Whereas INN
No.
has everything to lose.
Yeah, I guess.
They have staff. They have, they have these millions of dollars coming in from these corporations. We don't have that.
Well, and foundations as well. Like the Bar Foundation here in New England won't give to most of us directly. They insist on going through INN. Okay. I mean, I guess that's a thing. I mean, I personally have never been able to understand why a simple spreadsheet wouldn't allow a foundation like Bar to just disperse money to groups in the geographic area. There really aren't. We convened about 18 of those nonprofit news outlets with Bar and one other foundation last year in a conference, and now we're talking about another conference with our colleagues at Free Press that will do kind of the same thing, I guess with direct participation by Bar at a higher level this time. I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, that's how this is happening with the foundations too. The foundations are either like, nah, we don't fund journalism, or they're like, no, we're only going to go to this big outlet, this big entity over here, right? Because I guess they're somehow more trustworthy. And money seems to get lost in that process, Joanna. Mm-hmm. Money goes for overhead for groups like INN that could be spent directly on news. And we see less of it even than, so like my group gets like a couple thousand a year from Bar Foundation that way. We need way more than that. And they're one of the apex foundations in Boston and in New England. But we don't, we've talked to them, they did so far, there's no interest. They just want to deal with INN. And then INN acts as a gatekeeper and now is doing so also on the policy front. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I don't, and this is true.
It doesn't feel super representative. And I think, there are kind things to say about INN, Newsmat.
There are.
But I think on the balance, we provide INN with a lot of data points that are incredibly valuable as they go out and sell themselves as a network of our newsrooms. How much time did you spend filling out the index report that we need to do to get the money from Newsmatch? Those are hours you'll never get back. And right. They publish the index report, and that's a valuable piece of information, but it's the labor that we're doing that's not being compensated by the money that intermediary is hoovering up and then dispersing out while taking a large chunk for their overhead. So it's they're participants in a system that's perpetuating itself quite nicely. But that's at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do we?
And I mean, okay, if they want to hire all of us, that's cool. There's all this talk, Joanna, about consolidation, right, as being the thing to do. We didn't get into it really last week, but all these big entities, bigger than us at least, entities that have millions of dollars at their disposal, be it Press Forward, be it INN, be it whoever we talk about, right? Report for America, Rebuild Local News, ONA, the whole alphabet soup, Lion, whatever. Mm-hmm. There's buzz in those circles like that. Well, the smart business move is to consolidate operations like ours, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean now? So the idea is that money, even the little bits of money that are coming through to us on the ground, are now going to go into, AJP, American Journalism Project, or whoever's going to claim entire regions of the U.S. and basically have their own, sort of self-run regional dominant outlets with tons of money behind them, like serve our areas, probably without even bothering to buy us out for not very much money, right? So we just die, and they're what's left, and then all these funders pat themselves on the back for what a great job they did saving local journalism.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah, I mean, we've seen this play before with commercial journalism, with community newspapers becoming consolidated and pushed into regional hubs and taken out of the communities they were reporting.
Yeah.
And then it was, seen as a cost saving measure and also like a way to make more money. And I don't know. It just seems like the same thing repackaged as something new.
Well, I think it's a way to sort of cover up.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's a way for covering up for the fact that there's less donations, less money overall going into journalism. I mean, there's interesting ways that these different larger intermediary groups and foundations and stuff try to paper over this. I think in the first episode we had of this show, Brian and I were kind of quickly, looking through some numbers. I think AJP was putting out, I believe, because we looked at 2 or 3 or 4 different things in that show. But they play with numbers, right? And they try to sort of not tell what we perceive to be the truth and see pretty hard evidence to that point. Like there just isn't even as much money as was going into journalism, even the nonprofit sector, like 2 or 3 years ago. And the big reason is, we could say that funders are already getting bored of funding journalism, which is completely like the way that they are about everything they fund. They fund things for a few years, they're all excited, then they stop. But without having kind of hit the apex of that particular curve, we saw Trump come into office, and then we saw, as I've said in this show before, funders not incorrectly saying, gee, we have stuff like food and housing and school and this and that to fund, right? So journalism is going to be an afterthought of an afterthought. And so by doing this consolidation kick, to the extent it's really happening, they can say, well, see, look, we gave all this money to this region and make it look like it's like a bigger investment when in fact it's a smaller investment in that region. And you're going to see the local outlets dying off, or even the statewide ones like mine or yours, right? And neither state being very large, so although money-wise, both states, we got some money, right? So I don't know, and we don't have to, beat this one to death, I guess. And our original plan wasn't to get into general critique of groups like INN, but we can't help it. Any other thoughts, Joanna? I don't know.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I would love to see INN or another trade organization go to the mat for us instead of asking us to capitulate. That would be my one true wish.
That would be nice. It would also be nice if they weren't taking money from AI companies or foundations that have major investments in such companies, that kind of stuff. General divestment is one route, but again, that would be, now here you go, in my position, but we're not going to know what the position of all of our fellow publishers out there in our sector of journalism until they actually get asked and actually get listened to by the intermediary organizations. And like INN Days is happening right now. From what I've seen of what's happening at INN Days is nothing like this going on, right? I believe there's some talk about the catalytic capital stuff that we can get into hopefully in the next episode. We're starting to hear from Press Forward and others. And
a juicy one to dig into next
It
time.
is juicy indeed. But yeah, I think there's going to be, there's a need for some significant reform in groups like INN, or there's a need for publishers to, kind of pull out of groups like INN and decamp to, if not a group like the Alliance of Nonprofit News Outlets, other groups that are yet to be, that serve our needs better. I don't know. I don't see why we should continue paying dues to groups that are not going to work in our best interests always.
Yeah, or at least ask us what we think, They ask us for a lot of stuff,
They do, but I also want them to act on what we say. I mean, there's the democracy just isn't there in these groups.
No.
It's just communitarian, fake democracy, right? As I think also mentioned on previous episodes already. All right. Well, thank you, Joanna Detz of ecoRI News.
Thank you, Jason of Binge.
Namaste. Yeah, you're welcome. And so we'll be back in a couple weeks, hopefully with Brian and perhaps even other publishers, independent publishers in tow. Until then, we'll see, folks. What we see is bye.